Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about plurals and possessives and other ways that we tend to mess up apostrophes. This lesson is designed to remind you what you already know because you've learned it in elementary school and again in high school and middle school and many other times. But these are mistakes that I see in otherwise brilliant student papers on a regular basis, and they are easy to fix and remember as long as you are mindful. And so here I am just to remind you what the difference between a plural and a possessive is, and this is your chance to learn this for good and forever. Okay, what is a plural? A plural is a kind of noun. It means that there is more than one person, place, or thing. And regular plurals are made by adding an S or ES to a noun. So if I have a horse and I have another horse, I have horses with an ES. But if I have a plant and I have a second plant, it's plants with just an S. Now, there are also irregular plurals that change form or don't. A good example of this is octopus to octopi, man to men, and there are many other irregular plurals, some of which don't change at all, like, for example, sheep or deer. Okay, so let's take a look at these nouns. I have the famous British philosopher Raymond Williams, the year 1980, a printing press, a woman, the city of Portland, a wildebeest, a CRV, a cactus, and a cat. Oh, and the month of March. So if I want to talk about a whole bunch of marches, or a whole bunch of wildebeests, or a whole bunch of other Williamses, or a whole lot of printing presses, or a whole lot of women, all of those things are plural, a lot of cats. Right? So take a look at these examples. Notice that woman changes to women, so it doesn't have an S or an ES. That makes it a regular plural. But if I talk about the Williamses, I only add ES to. The 1980s, just an S. Just the year 1980 here. The decade of the 1980s here. If I want to compare the marches of 1921 and 2021, I can do that by just adding ES. If I want to look at Kuko's CRV and my CRV, I would say that there are just two CRVs. And if I want to compare my hometown, Portland, Connecticut, with Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine, I would say there's a lot of Portlands in the world. What I would never do, ever, is to add an apostrophe to a plural. Plural just means more than one. So those things that you see that say the Joneses with an apostrophe in it because it's just describing the family, it's on the mailbox, for example. No, it is wrong. You don't form a plural with an apostrophe. Not one time, ever. Okay, one time. And that is when you have a lowercase letter by itself. That's the only exception. There's two U's in ukulele. If I say there's a lot of A's in, aardvark, or mind your P's and Q's, and I use lowercase for P's and Q's, that's the one time when you can use an apostrophe for a plural. And the reason is there's not a lot of as in aardvark, and there's two us in ukulele, right? Like you can see how U apostrophe S is different from the word us or the word as. When you have a capital P's and Q's, you do not need the apostrophe, but when you use a lowercase letter singular like this, it's very helpful to have the apostrophe to understand that it is not some kind of a word that you are misreading. Again, this is the only exception. The rest of the time, like 1980s, there is no apostrophe in the decades. When we talk about numbers, you do not need an apostrophe for plurals. Ever, except this one case. So you're not sure what to do, how to form the plural of a word. Oh no, who are you going to call? Hey Alexa. Any dictionary will tell you what the plural of a word is. Okay, let's move on to possessives. Possessives show ownership. That means that now that you have this lovely vocabulary of parts of speech, I can remind you that plurals are nouns and possessives are adjectives. So if I have a plant, that's a noun, right? It's a thing. But if I talk about the plant's leaves, now plant apostrophe S owns its leaves, right? But leaves is a noun. What's happening there is that the apostrophe is turning your noun into an adjective. And in order to form the possessive of a noun, I am going to add an apostrophe and an S if there's no S sound at the end of the word. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Because sometimes there is an S sound at the end of a word. And then you have to decide. You still add the apostrophe first, and then you have to decide if you want to repeat the S sound, like S's, right? So going back to my friends, the Williamses, if I say this is Raymond Williams' book, that's one way to say it, but I can also say Raymond Williams's book. And either of those is correct. So here's my examples. How do I make a woman own something? How do I make Raymond Williams own something? How do I make a spoon own something? How do I make a cactus own something? My CRV. How do I make my CRV own something? The month of March own something, so on and so forth. Okay, and here are my answers. The first thing I do is write the noun, the woman, and then I add an apostrophe, and then I have to add an S because that's how you do it, right? So apostrophe S is singular possessive. Portland's port, the cat's pajamas, the wildebeest's horns, Kuko's CRV's brakes, March's weather, 1980s particular horrors. Now notice I'm not talking about the 1980s, meaning more than 1 year. Now I'm talking about 1 year, which happened to be a particularly awful year in, say, hair metal, fashion, many other awful things. But now look at these other words down here. The cactus's roots. Now, if I wanted to say the cactus roots, I could. It's a little bit awkward, but I could. But I certainly am comfortable saying Raymond Williams books and not adding that extra S sound. Okay, so notice that it depends upon pronunciation if the word has an S sound at the end of it. But either way, you write the singular form of the word and then add an apostrophe, and then in most cases you will add another S, right? But in this case, Raymond Williams books is an exception. Here are some other examples of my Raymond Williams example, right? So if Mr. Boaz owns a patent, how are we going to write Mr. Boaz patent? Maybe we'll write Mr. Boaz's patent, but I'm inclined to pronounce it Mr. Boaz patent. The lady has a wedding band and it's got a topaz in it, and that topaz possesses its sparkle. So how do we write the topaz's sparkle or the topaz sparkle? So it's got that S sound at the end. Hermann Hesse has written his novels, right? So how do we say Hesse's novels? Raymond Williams owns his ideas, so Williams' ideas or Williams's ideas. And a carcass owns its stench. So how do we talk about the carcass's stench? So here's what I propose. Mr. Boaz patent, but you could say Mr. Boaz's patent. The same with the topaz sparkle or the topaz's sparkle. So those first two are interchangeable. Hesse's novels, I can't imagine not making that S sound afterwards, so I would not write HESS apostrophe without the extra S. But William's ideas, I can imagine writing. And the carcass's stench, like Hesse, I think you need that extra S sound. So these things look awkward, but there really is a rule here. And that rule is write the noun, add the apostrophe, and then in almost all cases, add an S. But if you really hate the sound of the double S, you can leave that second S off. Okay? You write the noun, add the apostrophe, add an S. And that's how you make a singular possessive. And what you're doing is you're taking Mr. Boaz in the first one and turning him into an adjective that describes the patent. The same with topaz, right? The sparkle is the noun in that noun phrase, and topazes is an adjective. Okay, so now let's talk about plural possessives. Remember that plurals are nouns that are more than one of a thing. So if I have an apricot, that's single. If I have apricots, that's plural. If I have a single apricot and it owns its pit, then that's the apricot apostrophe S's pit. If I have a whole slew of apricots in my bowl and I want to talk about their pits, I will say the apricots S apostrophe pit. So how do I form the plural possessive? The first thing I do is to make the plural form, and in this case, it's apricots, A-P-R-I-C-O-T-S. Form the plural of the word. If the word is man, you change it to men. But if it's apricot, you change it to apricots. Then the next thing you do is add an apostrophe. Apricots, with an apostrophe at the end of it, has an S sound. So bam, I am done. But men, with an apostrophe, does not have an S sound. So I have to add the S after the apostrophe. If there is an S sound at the end of the word, you add the apostrophe and Bob's your uncle, you are done. If there is no S sound at the end of the word, you have to add an extra S and give these a try. So we'll start with the mattress, the word mattress. The blank thickness is not to my liking, so that's singular possessive. And the second one, she slept on a pile of 20 blank. And the second one is the bends, right? This is a disease you get from getting nitrogen bubbles in your blood. The diver got the blank from coming up too fast, and then the blank symptoms are very severe. That's possessive. Okay? So one of these is a singular possessive example and one is a plural possessive example. Okay, so let's go back to our stuff. We have a collection of women. We have the Williamses, right? That's the family. We have the 1980s. We have spoons. We have the two marches, century apart. We have cactuses. By the way, you can also say cactus or cacti because sometimes cactus has a regular plural and sometimes it has an irregular plural depending on who you're talking to. Depending on whom you're talking to. So how about wildebeest? That's one that can be regular or irregular. Cats, how do I make cats own things? How do I make printing presses own things? And my various Portlands, including the one I live in, how do I make that own things? Okay, take a look. I've formed the plural in each case. I add an apostrophe and I add an S if there is no est sound. The women's hat. Women is the plural of woman, and then I add an apostrophe, and then I add an S. The many Portland's attributes are quite different, right? I formed Portland is singular, Portlands with an S is plural, I made the plural, and then I added an apostrophe, there's already an S sound, I am done. Cat turns to cats, turns to cats with a apostrophe after it, I don't have to add anything else. Same with wildebeests, same with CRVs, same with marches, right? In all of those cases, all I have done is formed the plural, I added the apostrophe, and I was done. Now take a look at the plurals down below. These are ones that form plural with ES. So if I say the cactus is singular, cactuses is plural, I add an apostrophe, there's already an S sound at the end of the word, I am done. The Williams family, right? I went to see the Williamses because there are more than one of them. And in this case, they own their books all together. So the Williamses books together make quite a collection. I formed the plural, which, by the way, never, ever, ever, ever has an apostrophe in it. I add an apostrophe. There is no need to add an extra S sound because the plural is a regular plural. Okay, so now let's try these. I saw the blank today at Target, the Macy's. How are you going to spell that? And then I went to the Macy's house for dinner. How are you going to spell that? Again, there's more than one of them, right? We're talking about the entire family. I saw the blank today at Macy's. How would I pronounce that? Well, would you say I saw the Mills today at Macy's, or I saw the Millses today at Macy's? I went to the blank house for dinner. Well, here's some answers. Don't get mad, but this is right. I saw the Macy's today at Target. That's how you make the plural, right? I take the singular and I add an S. There is no apostrophe in plural. However, if I'm talking about going to their house, they own their house, and so that's possessive. So I went to the Macy's, I formed the plural in the first sentence, I add an apostrophe, and then I'm done. The Mills, I'm going to say Millses. I can't imagine saying I saw the Mills today at Macy's. I'm going to say the Millses. And then if I want to add possessive to that, I'm going to add an apostrophe at the end. I went to the Millses' house for dinner. So a quick recap. A plural noun is formed without an apostrophe, and it just means more than one person, place, or thing. It's a plural noun, right? However, a possessive is formed with an apostrophe, and it turns that noun into an adjective. Possessives are made by adding an apostrophe and an S after that apostrophe if the word doesn't already end in an S. A plural possessive shows ownership by a plural noun. So if I have 50 plants in my office and their leaves are all falling off, I would say my plants S apostrophe leaves are falling off. Plural possessives are made by forming the plural noun, adding an apostrophe, and adding an S only if there is not one. All right, so finally, in the name of all that is holy, stop misspelling it. And here's why you misspell it all the darned time. It is possessive. It is a possessive pronoun. So all of the rules that I have given you thus far pertain to nouns. I'm going to say that one more time. All of the rules I've given you thus far pertain to nouns. When you take the word its and you add, or the word it, and you add apostrophe S, it becomes it is, right? It becomes a contraction for a pronoun and a verb. So I say it's raining out. But in this case here, it is a pronoun, not a noun. So remember, all the rules I've given you so far have been about nouns. However, there are no apostrophes in possessive pronouns. What are possessive pronouns? They are hers, right? You do not spell hers H-E-R apostrophe S. His, you don't spell that H-I apostrophe S. Theirs. And finally, its. Make a vow to yourself. If this is a mistake that you make, and nearly all of you do, and this is one of the terrible failures of spell check and autocorrect, right, is that they are not very good at recognizing the difference between its and its. Now, I am here to tell you today that when its is a pronoun that shows ownership, despite the fact that you may want to show ownership with an apostrophe, this is the one case where you cannot. So do a search if you're bad at this. If this is a mistake that you make, even if it's an unconscious mistake, even if you know it's a mistake you make because of the fact that autocorrect does it so often, you can edit for this so easily in the days of search, find, and replace in your word processing program. Simply open a search function and find all of your its, IT apostrophe. That's all you need to put in there, and look at each one and make sure that you have it right. This is an easy thing to do. If you have it right, no one's going to notice it. If you have it wrong, we professors notice it 95% of the time, right? I don't always highlight it or circle it, but I often do as I'm going through and correcting your papers. I am trying to highlight your apostrophe mistakes so that you have a sense if it's a thing that you do, so that you can start to pay attention to this. It will take you 5 minutes at the end of writing a paper to simply do a search for your apostrophes and make sure everywhere you have an apostrophe is some kind of a possessive and that you have the apostrophe in the right place. Okay, that's my story. And remember, when in doubt, use the dictionary. Thanks, and have a great day.